Hi, this is Mark News from Plant Talk Radio. Thanks for subscribing and listening to our podcast, Your Gardening Questions from Plant Talk Radio. If you have a gardening question you'd like our host Fred Howard to answer, send him an email. The email address is fred@planttalkradio.com. Now for today's question. And Fred, the yellowing of the pines, I know a lot of people have been writing and calling about that, and they're a little concerned.
And each year, that is a kind of a current topic this time of year. The statement evergreen is a misnomer. Now, let's start there and then explain. Evergreens put out a leaf this coming spring, or let's just say they did last spring. That leaf will be the perky one yet. It will be the one that goes through winter. It'll come out of winter and may start discoloring and dropping at the end of the winter as next year's new leaves are coming out, or it may hold. In the case, and one of the plants that worries people to death is white pine, and others. The leaves, needles, as we call them, are going to be on come spring. Let's just pick on a blue spruce for a minute. The magnificence of that light steel blue color, growing out 8, 10, sometimes 12 inches. That will be it was this past year's beauty. Now, it will still be there. And the more, so to speak, the more you pay for a blue spruce, the farther back the needles will hold in terms of actual years as well as blue. So the one called hoopseye blue spruce that is, I put out foliage last spring. It's still this beautiful hue of steel gray. It will be that way next year as the new growth comes out. It'll be that way the third year back then as new growth comes out. And then finally, and I say finally, in the third and fourth year, those needles will drop off. This is very alarming to those who did not particularly pay attention to our suggestions of watering in the early summer. And let's go back to the white pine. They have shed quite heavily this year at a point right now, continuing, but they started in that August period when we had lots of rain, lots of beautiful weather, and then all of a sudden it turned dry as a bone. Those needles were going to fall off anyhow, for the most part, but then they accelerate in their dropping because there is way less water in the plant. Water helps hold the needles on the plants, and I'm going to digress now to the wilt stop we talked about a little bit ago. Wilt stop, when you spray it onto even the cut tissue in a wreath, will help seal in the water inside the needles and in the stems so that they don't dry, they therefore don't drop, and so on. So let's just say that if your pine, spruce, and sometimes junipers and taxus, which are less obvious, but when they start dropping heavily, you should think back, did I water when I should have? And then, is this normal? Has this happened in the past? And on a dry summer, it will be, let's just say, greatly accelerated to the point of alarm. Back in the days when I was answering phones in the garden center, holy smokes, come quick, there's something wrong with my white pine. Well, all you had to know is what day of the month it was and what month of the year, because it was typical for the white pine. However, the first thing always was, I'm glad you called. It probably is not a major problem, but please do set up the sprinkler. Set up the sprinkler so that it can run in one spot for 4 to 6 hours, slowly wetting the area down, and then repeat that about every third week during the drought so that the plant doesn't dry up and accelerate the death of the needle. Because obviously they do need their leaves, which are needles in this case, to make new food. But still, it's a misnomer when we think evergreen means they always keep that foliage. Anytime you've walked into a pine forest or spruce and so on, if the bottom branches are gone and you look up along the trunk, you don't see anything living until you get clear out to the tips. One of the key ones that I get a kick out of watching is down in the Hocking Hills area, the hemlocks that are natural in that area, at least some of them are. They will have a trunk 12, 15, 18 inches in diameter, not a single branch for 30 feet up, and then not a needle on the tips of the branches until you get clear out 8-10 feet away from the trunk. But they're particularly normal. Their roots are growing usually in stream bed areas where they're moist. The tops are doing their thing. The plants are happy as they can be, but it can sure scare the strangers.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, thanks again for listening to our podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our other podcasts as well, the Plant of the Week podcast and the Plant Talk Radio podcast, all on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to sponsor a daily podcast, contact us at fred@planttalkradio.com. To find out more about Fred Hauer and Plant Talk Radio, visit our website, planttalkradio.com.
Circle270media.com